I have to say to an ordinary person, the political ideology of today's Democrats makes no sense. Why your priority is disarming a law-abiding citizen, but not going after the violent criminal. And to be clear,
Ted Cruz asked one question in a Senate hearing that the witness couldn't answer cleanly. Not a gotcha, a straight question about which crisis is actually killing more people. Watch what happens when the room has to sit with the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are at yet another hearing called by Democrats on gun control. Understand that today's Democrats in the Senate, these are not your father's Democrats. There are no moderate Democrats left in Congress. Today's Democrats, when it comes to guns, their objective is to disarm law-abiding citizens. They simultaneously embrace policies that release violent criminals from jail. They're not interested in locking up murderers. They're not interested in locking up gangbangers. They're not interested in locking up violent criminals. Instead, they systematically support policies. Their priority is not stopping the criminals. Their priority is disarming law-abiding citizens. I have to say to an ordinary person, the political ideology of today's Democrats makes no sense. Why your priority is disarming a law-abiding citizen, but not going after the violent criminal. And to be clear, it is the radical left that advocates abolishing the police and defunding the police. And when I say there are no moderate Democrats left, the Biden administration has nominated not one, not two, but three of the leading advocates of abolishing the police to senior positions at the U.S. Department of Justice. Every single Democrat on this committee voted to confirm every single one of them, but not just on this committee. Every single Democrat in the United States Senate voted to confirm all three of the Biden nominees, including Rachel Rollins, nominated by the U.S. Attorney in Massachusetts, one of the leading advocates of abolishing the police, as a local prosecutor. She put out a list of violent crimes that she wouldn't prosecute. Who that is the only prevention she has against the violent criminals that the Democrats are unleashing. And by the way, to give you an underscoring of it, look, we have a mental health crisis in this country. I've repeatedly introduced legislation to improve school safety, to invest to double the number of police officers in schools. Democrats objected. To invest $15 billion in mental health counselors in schools. Democrats objected. And by the way, they call it a public health crisis because they want to put supposed experts in charge of disarming you. The Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights is not a public health crisis. What is a public health crisis is the crime rates that are skyrocketing because Democrats keep letting murderers and violent criminals out of jail. But Dr. Rainey, let me ask you a question in terms of public health. Right now today, what's the leading cause of death for Americans age 18 to 45?
I believe that it's opioids.
It is drug overdoses. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. 70% of that came from Chinese fentanyl that is flooding across our southern border because this administration has opened up our southern border to 8.6 million illegal immigrants, has enriched the drug traffickers. Do you think, Dr. Rainey, that fentanyl flooding across our open border on the south that has killed collectively 100,000 overdoses last year, do you think that's a public health crisis?
Absolutely. Synthetic fentanyl is a major crisis, and Senator Reid from my home state of Rhode Island has been a leader in trying to stop the supply of synthetic fentanyl.
Except he hasn't, because Senator Reid, along with every other Democrat, supports Joe Biden's open borders, because when we try to secure the borders, they block it over and over and over again. And the criminals who come across, who are taking people's lives, that is because the Democrats refuse to enforce the law.
Senator Cruz, equally important is harm reduction to ensure that those who use opioids have access to things like Suboxone or buprenorphine and methadone to help so that they don't use illicit substances off the street. Thank you.
Here's the actual structure of Cruz's argument. Underneath the rhetoric, he's making two separate claims, and it's worth pulling them apart. Claim 1, on criminal justice appointments. Cruz pointed out that 3 DOJ nominees with records of supporting reduced or non-prosecution policies were confirmed with unanimous Democratic support. His specific example was Rachel Rollins, who was a local prosecutor, had published a list of offenses her office wouldn't prosecute. That's a verifiable record, not a talking point, and it's a fair question to ask what messaging a unanimous confirmation vote sends, regardless of what the underlying policy debate is about. Claim 2, the fentanyl comparison. Cruz asked directly what the leading cause of death is for Americans 18 to 45. The answer was drug overdoses, over 100,000 last year, with a large share tied to fentanyl. His point wasn't that gun policy doesn't matter. His point was a scale argument. If the goal is preventing deaths, one crisis is getting hearings and legislation, and another, larger one, is getting comparatively less attention relative to its death toll. Now, here's where it's worth slowing down instead of just running with the momentum of the hearing. When the witness pivoted to harm reduction, Suboxone, methadone, treatment access, Cruz treated that as a dodge, but it's worth asking whether it actually was one. He asked if fentanyl is a public health crisis. She said yes. Answering yes, and here's what public health responses to a crisis typically include, isn't necessarily avoiding the question. It's a different proposed solution, border enforcement versus treatment access, not a refusal to engage with the premise. That distinction matters because the strongest version of Cruz's argument doesn't need the framing that Democrats don't care about any of this. The actual checkable disagreement is about which lever, enforcement, treatment, prosecution discretion, does the most to bring the number down. That's a real policy fight with real trade-offs on both sides, and it survives without needing to attribute bad faith to anyone in the room. Where Cruz is strongest is on specifics, named nominee, named policy, named vote count. Where the segment gets weaker is anywhere it swaps a specific claim for a claim about what an entire party secretly wants. The receipts carry the argument. The mind reading doesn't need to.